Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you would, please have the clerk report House Committee Substitute 1.
Clerk, please report.
House Committee Substitute 1 to House Bill 7.
Gentleman from Lincoln.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will explain the committee sub. We are taking several things out of the bill, changing several things inside this bill. And so when we adopt this committee sub, that will be what I'm explaining. If you were in committee, you remember that this was House Committee Substitute 2. But as that sub passes out of the committee and transitions to the floor, that then makes it House Committee Substitute 1. So, Mr. Speaker, I would move for adoption of House Committee Substitute 1.
Motions for the adoption of House Committee Substitute 1. Is there any discussion? Lady from Jefferson 38, do you wish to discuss the sub? You're recognized to do so, ma'am.
May I ask the gentleman a question, please?
He will yield.
Gentlemen, I watched most of the committee meeting, and there were 2 committee amendments. Were those rolled into the sub and reported on our screens?
Yes, ma'am. They are rolled into the sub.
Lady from Jefferson.
Thank you.
Questions for the body is adoption of House Committee Substitute 1. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Those opposed, nay. House Committee Substitute 1 is adopted. Gentleman from Lincoln.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will attempt to explain this bill, which is, as I said in committee, it's a fairly lengthy bill, but it is not difficult to understand as you get into it and read it. So we'll start off with the very first section and go section by section. Number 1 is simply just definitions that are going to be seen throughout the bill. Section 2 requires the Cabinet to do a yearly analysis of TANF, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, block grants to determine if there are unobligated funds. If it is determined that there are unobligated funds there in the Cabinet, those funds will be used to assist in funding a new job placement program that we are establishing in Section 18 and additional work supports through KTAP, the Kentucky Transitional Assistance Program. Section 3 codifies federal law that restricts cash assistance from being spent in bars, adult entertainment facilities, casinos, on alcohol, tobacco, and lottery tickets in order to create penalties and for violations in this section. The first violation for misuse of cash assistance would be a 1-month suspension on the assistance. The second would be a 3-month suspension, and the third would be a 5-year suspension. It restricts the use of electronic benefit cards to purchase items necessary for the welfare of the family, requires the Cabinet to put multiple assistance programs on one card with a minimum of SNAP and Medicaid on the same card. Section 4, the General Assembly affirms the mission of the SNAP and recommends that 75% of monthly benefits be used to purchase healthy foods and use the Kentucky Double Dollars program at farmers markets across the state to enhance the benefits. To use surplus SNAP education funds to expand access to farmers markets and enhancing the Double Dollars program, helping both those on assistance and our farmers. In Section 5, we established a SNAP transitional benefit alternative to ensure families transitioning off of TANF and KTAP continue to receive those SNAP benefits for an additional 5 months. We request a SNAP Elderly Simplified Application Project waiver to allow seniors and individuals with disabilities who receive SNAP to use a simplified application for their benefits and extend their enrollment in the program to 36 months in order to make the process easier for those seniors and those individuals with disabilities. We also waive the requirement for recertification interviews for those same individuals. We request a SNAP standard medical deduction waiver to allow seniors and individuals with disabilities a standard medical deduction from their income each year instead of having to itemize and claim medical deductions over $35. Individuals can still choose to either take that standard deduction or they can still itemize if that is their choice. To reactivate the SNAP work requirements for able-bodied adults with no dependents, require SNAP households to comply with change reporting requirements, meaning changes in income must be reported within 10 days of the date that change becomes known to the household. Currently, households only have to report income changes every 6 months to 1 year. Section 6 creates a community engagement program using currently established SNAP work requirements for able-bodied adults without dependents inside of Medicaid, requiring them to participate in at least 80 hours of qualifying activity each month. Section 7 prohibits the Cabinet for Health and Family Services from establishing a basic health program without first obtaining authorization from the General Assembly to do so. Section 8 requires the Cabinet to conduct eligibility determinations in a normal course of business to compile a list of ineligible Medicaid recipients. When the federal government lifts what is called maintenance of effort restrictions, the Cabinet will immediately start removing ineligible recipients and will have 12 months to complete the process. To explain what maintenance of effort is, right now the federal government says that if someone goes on Medicaid and they may have accidentally been placed on it, they may not qualify. Right now, the government restricts you from taking that person off of Medicaid, no matter whether they're eligible or not. So once that maintenance of effort is lifted, that is when they will clear the rolls of those who do not qualify. Section 9 prohibits the Cabinet and Department of Medicaid Services from making presumptive eligibility determinations. Section 10 establishes the responsibilities of hospitals when making presumptive eligibility determinations. This is language that is given to us by the Kentucky Hospital Association. If you don't know what presumptive eligibility is, that is a self-attestation that is given to hospitals or the Cabinet to say they make a certain amount of income, they have a certain residency, whatever it may be, and they make a determination off of that without a full Medicaid application while that Medicaid application is being processed. So we're just adding some guidelines in there to make sure that they have proper training, and that the Hospital Association gave us this language to say we're going to hold ourselves accountable in this situation, but make sure that we don't harm our hospitals across the state. Establish responsibilities. I'm sorry, that was Section 10. Section 11 requires the Cabinet to file a waiver to allow Medicaid to be used for treatment of incarcerated individuals with substance use disorder. Section 12 permits a custodial parent who is disqualified from receiving cash benefits for any reason to designate someone to receive cash assistance on behalf of the child. Section 13 directs the Cabinet to coordinate with the Department of Correction to use Victim Information Notification Everyday Network in order to identify public assistance beneficiaries who have been incarcerated or released. Section 14 requires the Cabinet to update the Public Assistance Oversight and Advisory Committee on implementation of this Act. Section 15 authorizes the Attorney General to enforce this law if it is not followed by the Cabinet. Section 16 creates a job placement assistance program in the Education Workforce Development Cabinet for able-bodied adults that are enrolled in Medicaid. Section 17 reestablishes the Medicaid Oversight and Advisory Committee as a Public Assistance Oversight Advisory Committee and will provide oversight to the implementation of all matters relating to public assistance. This language may change some in the Senate, depending on what the House does with a reorg bill that we have over here. So that section may change a little bit based on what those committees are called and whether they are moved to become standing committees. Section 18 requires the enrollment and benefit tracking agencies for Medicaid and SNAP to receive and review data from various sources that might indicate a change in eligibility for benefits. Those sources are the Department of Revenue, the Administrative Office of the Courts, the Office of Vital Statistics, Kentucky Lottery Corporation, and the Office of Unemployment Insurance. It prohibits the Cabinet from applying for or renewing any waiver of SNAP work requirements unless the unemployment rate meets or exceeds 10% in the state. The Cabinet can also determine if a specific county meets the requirements for that waiver, or the General Assembly authorizes the Cabinet to do so. That section also requires the Cabinet to assign all individuals who are subject to SNAP work requirements to an employment and training program. Section 19, prohibit the Cabinet from using self-attestation of income, residency, age, household composition, caretaker or relative status, or coverage for the purpose of determining Medicaid eligibility without verifying that information prior to enrollment. Residents of an assisted living facility or long-term care facility will be exempted from this requirement because they generally have no reportable income. You may have heard from certain organizations across this state that those would be the two types of folks who will be affected the most by this piece, and so we are making sure that they are exempt. Require the Cabinet to use only the most recent income verification data available when determining eligibility for public assistance, and permits the Cabinet to deem individuals who traffic EBT cards ineligible for all public assistance for a period of not more than 6 months for the first offense, or they can declare them permanently ineligible upon the second offense. Section 20 allows for an appeals process for individuals disqualified from receiving those benefits due to this act. Section 21, provide the Public Assistance Oversight and Advisory Committee with a copy of any waiver application submitted to the federal government for approval. Reapply for any waiver amendment, or state plan amendment associated with this act every 12 months if it is deemed by the federal government that it is going to be denied. Section 22, require the Cabinet for Health and Family Services to take appropriate action, including enforcement of relevant federal regulations to ensure that the responsible parent or parents of a needy dependent child provide child support of that child. That is for those who are non-custodial parents. Permit the Cabinet to waive such requirements in the case of child abuse, domestic abuse, or if the Cabinet determines such actions would not be in the interest of the child. And permit the Cabinet to disqualify an individual from public assistance benefits during any month in which the individual is delinquent in a court-ordered child support. Section 23 requires the Cabinet to assess the additional cost to the state incurred by increasing eligibility to 200% of the federal poverty level, and an assessment of what the fiscal impact of discontinuing multiple co-payments for families with more than one child in CCAP. We're asking that we start keeping track of this information so that we have better data when we start to develop a bridge insurance program, which is going to be established by a task force that we established in the back of this, back in this bill. Section 24 requires the Cabinet to apply for any waivers that may be necessary for implementing this act. Section 25 requires the Education and Workforce Development Cabinet to develop a website where private employers throughout the Commonwealth can post available job openings. 26 directs the Legislative Oversight and Investigations Committee to conduct an in-depth analysis of TANF, KTAP spending, and identify alternative sources for child welfare funding. Sections 27 and 29 through 29 directs LRC to establish a benefits cliff task force to study and make recommendations regarding strategies to assist public assistance beneficiaries in bridging the benefits cliff as income increases. That also extends into sections 30 and 31, and section 32 is a severability clause. That is what the bill does, Mr. Speaker, and with that I would move for passage of House Bill 7 as amended by House Committee Substitute 1.